think I just go to my slide. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you can able to see my slides, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are few other speakers from the same institute, that is Central Electrochemical Research Institute, Karaikudi. So I hope most of you familiar with this institution. This particular today talk, I'll be going to talk on materials, particularly related to photo or photoelectro or photocatalytic hydrogen production, or photoelectrocatalytic hydrogen production. Siavar, we are from main campus that is situated in Karaikudi. I don't know maybe whether they introduced you these details. Maybe I just go quickly. Recently, we have renovated our departments into majorly six activities: the corrosion material production and electrochemical power source, and electroplating and metal finishing, and electrochemical process engineering, and electroorganic and materials electrochemistry, and we do have electronics and electrocatalysis division. So here there is one information I want to share with other faculty members, also some with students. Here there are some possibilities to stay you or our students to spend some time at CSIR Sikri Karakudi for their final year project, particularly for MSc or MPhil or even MTech, even engineering students like ME students, not all ME students, some materials or energy related people can come here and then they can stay 3 months or 6 months or even some cases a year also. They can use the laboratory as well as the characterization facilities. Of course, there are proper application is required to avail this facility. So they have to, if in such a case, you can ask them to go to this our website. There you can see the academics column. So there you can see the academics column where you can see the dissertation guidelines. So I think twice in a year we will accept the application. So but due to the COVID-19 this year, I don't know what is the status for this November session. Of course, for from next year onwards, this will be again it will continue this activity. So it has to be, the application has to be submitted to our office through proper channel. So then they can do their final year master's thesis here. Coming to my group, as the person was introduced, so we are working on various aspects of material, particularly 2D layered inorganic graphene analogs or metal oxides. So these like MOS2 or boron nitride or graphene or modified graphene or functionalized graphene. Here the specific process which we use for this purpose is supercritical fluid processing. So it's unlike like our hydrothermal process. This really goes to the supercritical conditions. That means in case of water, it's at the temperature will be 480 and then pressure will be 28 megapascal. In such a case, the reaction will occur very quickly, and then the properties of the solvents also changes abnormally, and considering in a normal phase and then as well as in supercritical phase. So because of this, most of the synthesis we do within a minute or two, or some worst cases we will go for up to 30 minutes also. Okay, but the entire process will be finished within 10-15 minutes. So that is the advantage of this supercritical fluids. We use this particular technique for the exfoliation of layered inorganic materials. Also, we do synthesis of metal oxides and sulfides and phosphates. So for various applications. So one of the application for these materials, like you can use it in solid state batteries as well as a photocatalysis. So we do some limited studies on solid state batteries as well as photocatalysis, particularly photocatalytic hydrogen production or photoelectrocatalytic hydrogen production. The other side, we do some fundamental chemistry where like molecules like fluorine or small molecules would be dissolved in some solvent, and then we can make a liquid-liquid interface that by having two immiscible liquids. Okay, So by having that, then you could able to create some potential between the two immiscible liquids. Generally call it as a liquid-liquid interface. By tuning the liquid-liquid interface, you could able to tune the morphology or size of a particular nanomaterials. So this case mostly we'll use C60 based materials or C60 derivatives. We could able to make C60 sheets or C60 tubes or rods, or similarly even cubes, three-dimensional cubes could be found by using the liquid-liquid interface preparation. Most of these cases are very fundamental. So this formation of this nanostructure itself is interesting aspects at present. Of course, we are trying to do some applications for these materials, but unfortunately not much. So the other active part which we are working is supercapacitors, where we make various carbon material either by synthetic or by natural. In the sense, we'll have some graphene or graphite, we'll convert into graphene, and then this graphene will be functionalized with nitrogen or sulfur or even some metal oxides by using mostly the supercritical period processing or some other Sol-Gel process. The other side, we also convert the biomaterials, the bio waste, basically the bio waste that is with the concept of waste to wealth concept. So we use the waste material and then convert into bio-derived carbon. So this carbon or carbon composites is used for the fabrication of supercapacitors. I think my other colleague was talking about a supercapacitor, and I think yesterday. Maybe if I get chance, maybe tomorrow I will explain to you what we are doing at the CSA Sikri in the material aspects. So coming to the renewable energy sources, these are the various possible sources which we are already using it. It's maybe in the large or in a small quantity. For example, if you start from the bottom, the waste to energy or ocean energy, these are the concepts level. People are already proved it, but unfortunately not much effort because the infrastructure facility is highly is too expensive for us. The biomass we are using in a very low scale, but increasing the biomass based energy production is maybe have limited options since there are a long way to go. If you coming to hydropower, we are already enjoying the hydropower, right? Like where electricity comes from the Metu Dam or Periyar Dam. We are depending on the water resource, but unfortunately, it's very limited hope for this to improve further. So the India is talking about converting all our requirement to convert this renewable energy sources. In such a case, this is very difficult to increase the potential of this particular methodology. Similarly, the windmills is also well known. We are using it if you go to Nagarkoil side or in the Palladam side, you can see there are a lot of Pallati or Palladam side, there are a lot of windmills, but unfortunately these are not stable source. This is very seasonal. Even a day, there is a lot of fluctuations. So this could not be a sustainable source, but of course this will contribute to a reasonably good amount of our energy requirement. The other two is maybe a solar based system, whether it's maybe solar based or solar thermal power based systems. But here the point is we are using the sunlight. But countries like India is always fortunate with a lot of sunlight throughout the year. So here these are the promising source which is available. Maybe we cannot increase further, but we could use it more efficiently to improve the requirement. For example, if we see some data, then it may be easy for you to understand. So there are 1,25,000 terawatt of solar energy strikes the surface of the Earth. Okay, so the global consumption is only 13.5 terawatt in 2001, and then this is 80% comes from the fossil fuels, and then it is predicted it will be 30 terawatts in 2050. So if you convert 0.16 coverage of Earth with 10% efficient solar cells, and then you can able to make 2/3 of our requirement. But fortunately, if we see the coverage and then this efficiency of the solar cells, what we are having in our country is much higher. So that means we could really able to achieve the solar based energy. But if you see here, the main challenge is the efficiency of the process and then the cost. I think the solar cells or solar panels are almost 25 to 40% in theoretically, but of course minimum we will get a 25% efficient solar cells. But the cost is mainly is a deciding factor. Here, crystalline material or silicon-based materials are widely used because of this processing of silicon. So the cost of these solar panels are very high. But you could see last 10 years, this solar panel costs are drastically coming down. So if you are currently it is the electricity comes from this solar panels is at least 2 to 3 times higher than the conventional electricity charges. But of course, there is a conventional electricity charges are increases. Similarly, this cost of this solar electricity comes down year by year. So maybe another 3 or 4 years, you could see a lot of change in these values. So after 3 or 4 years, the cost of the solar electricity and conventional electricity will be the same, or the solar electricity will be much cheaper than the conventional electricity. So that's why there are various processes are slowly coming up. Though these processes are known for a very long time, so almost like 3 to 4 decades, we are working on it. But there is a slow increment in all these aspects, whether it may be a solar water heater or solar drying, or solar cooking, or solar desalination, or most of the cases it's a percentage efficiency is more than 30%. We do have artificial photosynthesis or solar water splitting, so that's what we are going to talk about it. And then this, the other side is a solar panel. So the entire house is powered with the solar panels. So that's why the government is also insisting or encouraging the farmers to make a solar panel to pump to power their pump sets at the local level. Okay. So where you could see this is a minimum of 22% efficient solar cells are used in this case. So if we see the list, so these are the various possible lists for energy storage and conversion. Unfortunately, the capacitors are batteries and solar hydrogen storage and fuel cells and solar cells. As I told you, I think in the morning, Dr. Balaji was also talking about the fuel cells. The fuel cells and solar cells are comes under this conversion category.
Hello, Satish sir.
Yes.
Sir, one doubt I have actually in 7th slide, sir. My name is Dr. I. Ganesh, scientist, ARCI.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, sir, this 0.16% coverage with 10% efficiency solar cells can generate 20 terawatt of power, right?
Yeah.
Each day, how many hours we have to catch this one?
Sorry?
For how much time?
So this is actually
16% coverage, 10% efficiency, but how much time?
Yeah, this time is actually it's a routine. Our sun is not available only with the 12 hours. Even the 12 hours we have limited options after 9 o'clock to evening 5 o'clock. Only this much period is generally considered.
This 20 terawatt, that value has come based on what amount of time?
It is depends on active sun period, sir. That's why it's maybe it is from 9 o'clock to evening 5 o'clock.
Oh, it was the best. Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So these two device comes under the conversion device. In the fuel cells, you could see that chemical energy is converted into electrical energy, whereas the solar cells is light is converted into electrical energy. Okay. So whereas if you see the storage, so it may be there's batteries could be stored. Now, more importantly, the hydrogen storage. So that's what I think in morning was also there was some discussion on it. Maybe I didn't attend the complete talk, but I was attending for some time. But I could see there are hydrogen. There are a lot of opportunities, either starting from the production and storage, even the distribution of hydrogen. Why hydrogen is so important is the energy content. Okay, so why hydrogen is this is a best energy carrier. It's a carbon-free fuel. It's a burning hydrogen produces energy and pure water. So, but fortunately, it is hydrogen, though it is not available in the free form. It is available in the abundantly available in the form of water or hydrocarbons. So, can be used as a combustion efficiency enhancer in IC engines. It can be used to produce electricity in fuel cells. So that's what morning Balaji was talking about. If you can put hydrogen and oxygen in hydrogen and oxygen fuel cell, you could produce electricity, and then the emission will be only a water. There is no carbon at all in that case. So this is a completely environment friendly fuel. Offer superior energy storage that is alternate to batteries. So people are talking about batteries or capacitors or some other energy storage devices. But if you see the hydrogen energy storage, it's really huge. You could see this data, then it will be easy for you. For example, lithium-ion battery could store only 0.5 megajoules per kilogram. Okay, that gasoline is 46.9 megajoules per kilogram, whereas the hydrogen is 120 megajoules per kilogram. You could see how much the difference. Okay, it's almost 220 times higher when compared to batteries. So even if it is compared with the gasoline, it is almost 2.56 times much higher. So that's why people are interested on hydrogen-based vehicles or hydrogen-based fuel cells. So the energy content is really, really huge. But unfortunately, hydrogen is not available in the form of pure hydrogen. It's either, unfortunately, even in the atmosphere, we have only less than 1% of hydrogen. Okay. Why this energy density is high? This is known as the weight is very, very small when compared to any other element. So because this is that energy density in the sense the weight comes under bottom, right? So this is a light weight. Because of this, the energy density is very high. And then this is a most abundant in the form of water or methane or any other hydrocarbon. Hydrogen is always available. So this is a colorless and then also odorless. So this there is some advantage for this, but at the same time there is a disadvantages for this also. I will just let you know what are the disadvantages for this. So it's a non-toxic, non-carcinogenic gas. So it is not found in the pure form, but it is found. It exists as water or methane. So anything cannot be used as a fuel. Though the energy content is high, it cannot be simply used as a fuel. There are some requirements. Fortunately, the hydrogen fulfills all the requirements for a particular fuel to act as a fuel. For example, the lower heating value of hydrogen is much higher. That is a 33.33 kilowatt hour per kg. The self-ignition temperature is 585 degrees Celsius. That means it will not catch fire automatically. We need some kind of high temperature initiation. So that's one way it is shaped. That is, we can, though there is some leakage or something, it will be simply only a leakage. Okay, there may not catch automatically any fire unless otherwise there is some ignition. The flame temperature is higher. For example, it's a 2.05 degrees Celsius. So that means this is very close to or in between your methane and the gasoline gas. The ignition limit in air is 4 to 75%. There is a many minor value, then it may not catch fire. That is also one of the advantages. The minimum ignition energy is required for this. And flame propagation in air is relatively high. It's a 2.65, and diffusion coefficient is 0.61 centimeters per second. The toxicity is almost no. So it is when compared with any other fuels. As I told you, that's why there are a lot of hydrogen-based fuel cell vehicles already in the market. There are some hydrogen filling stations also available. So this is a very clean and efficient, can become cost efficient over a long period of time. It may not be initially this price of this car or bus or the vehicle will be very high because you are completely moving for a new technology. But slowly this, if you see the long time, then this definitely it will be a cheaper one. The hydrogen internal combustion engine cycles, the hydrogen is combusted the same way as like a traditional engines. The fuel cell conversion engines, the hydrogen is reacted with water to form electricity. Using that power, electric motor is runs. The safety concerns, there are a lot of issues. So here the hydrogen is not simply flammable. It creates explosion. So that is one of the major drawback of hydrogen. Okay, it's not simply, if it is any leakage, it will not simply catch fire as like your LPG or CNG gas, but it creates an explosion. Okay, hydrogen is the highest explosive with the air other than acetylene. Okay, you could see, you can imagine as like the hydrogen bomb. The pure hydrogen and oxygen flames burn in UV rays that are nearly invisible to humans. Even if it is catch fire, when it's burned with oxygen, then this comes under UV rays. That means you cannot see the fire in naked eye. That is one disadvantage. The other thing is it's odorless. As like your LPG, in case of any leakage, it's very difficult to detect the gas. So always you should have some flame detector or some artificial agents to detect it by your naked nose. I think there are many examples might be seen with Dr. Balaji's presentations. Here you could see there are some of the small bicycles. There is a small hydrogen tank over the backside. You could see this fuel cell is placed here. So this is able to run your bicycle up to 70 to 100 kilometers or to 30 kilometers per hour speed. So here this not only a kilometer, it's also the speed is also so important. Many battery vehicles would able to run even 400 kilometers per charge, but unfortunately the power density of those devices are very low. Because of this, you cannot go at high speed. So that is a major drawback of many energy storage devices. So though it can able to go for 400 kilometers, you cannot go more than 30 kilometers per hour speed. So that is another drawback. So similarly, this has been shown for the car also. This is a pictorial representation where it could be placed. Unfortunately, this is the most dangerous issues. So the hydrogen is stored in a tank, generally as like our pressurized tank, which are the cylinders which we are using in our laboratory. In case of any accident or any physical damage, then there will be some kind of explosion. So that will really the cost of the damage will be very high. So even people have been demonstrated in various levels. Even this small aircraft has been also have been shown using fuel cells, that by particularly hydrogen oxygen fuel cells to run in the road. In abroad, there are fuel cell stations also. That means hydrogen filling stations where you could see that rooftop is covered with solar panels. So the solar panels are used to electrolysis the water, and then this hydrogen produced by water electrolysis could be stored, and then it could be pumped into your car. So this is a kind of damages generally it occurs when you have hydrogen powered vehicles. So coming to the hydrogen economy, there are a lot of opportunity starting from the production. So at present the production cost of the hydrogen is also too high. And then second important issue is storage. People are trying to make different storage media, not in the form of pressurized gas or liquefied gas. So in the form of solid state storage. So the metal hydride is one of the promising storage medium for hydrogen. And then since metal organic framework or some carbon, even sometimes back carbon nanotubes have been focused for this hydrogen storage. But unfortunately, all these materials has its own merits as well as the demerits. So this is my point is, this is another one of the important area people can look for their future studies. Okay. Then the third one is the distribution. Once if you can able to store it, how to distribute it as like petrol pumping station. whether it could be stored, how it could be distributed. So that is another issue. I think these first two is more important for us. So let's see how hydrogen is produced. At present, there are various ways for hydrogen production. Okay. So the one is that steam reforming and partial oxidation, or thermal or thermochemical routes. Usually the thermal routes are very high, needs very high temperatures, from 3,000 to 4,000 degrees Celsius. So we don't have that kind of heat source. We have it, but it's only limited. For example, if we have some power plant or like kind of nuclear plants, there we could get such kind of heat. Other side, generally it's very difficult. So people are combined with some chemical route, thermochemical route, so that the temperature of the process can be reduced. Maybe even in this case, the minimum temperature is 800 or 900 degrees Celsius required. And then the other one is the electrolysis or electrochemical, and then photolysis or photochemical or photoelectrochemical. And then people are also attempting to make it biological or biochemical or photobiological routes by using some algae or bacteria to produce hydrogen. So the steam methane reforming is of natural gas is one of the promising, or the partial oxidation or reformation of other carbon-based fuels, or coal gasification, or biomass gasification, or pyrolysis. So these are the various other routes. Generally, people are now using it for production of hydrogen gas. Okay, so this is these are the again other sustainable sources. One is the coal. So since we don't want to do it from the coal, since we want to avoid the coal, right? So then I think these routes are generally not preferred. We should need something like this biomass or wind or solar based systems is always good for this. So coming back to the water, how to make hydrogen from water, you have to split the water into hydrogen and oxygen. You can do it by different routes, like again electrochemical decomposition. The electrochemical decomposition is maybe something you might be aware of it. Water electrolysis will take place at 1.23 volt. It's a theoretical voltage. But unfortunately, due to the oxygen evolution and the hydrogen evolution over voltage, the process will take place at a relatively higher potential. Instead of 1.23 volt, you need to use 1.7 or 1.8 volt minimum. So that means 0.5 or 0.6, which we are using as a excess. So it's almost 50% of your 1.23. So that means you are spending some 150 rupees to produce 100 rupees or 100 rupees. So, but still this process has some advantage, like in the case you can get a pure hydrogen. There are a lot of issues in the hydrogen production. For example, since it's a gaseous molecule, it will not come with only a hydrogen gas. There may be oxygen, or there may be a nitrogen gas, or some other organic vapors also comes with this. So the separation of hydrogen is also another important factor. So for that you have to spend some more money. But in the case of water electrolysis, if you have some compartmentalized cells, then you could have hydrogen gas alone. So that is one of the possibilities. The other one is the photocatalytic or photoelectrocatalytic decomposition of water by using a sunlight. So this sunlight is available free of cost. So the process you need to, the investment will be based on only a catalyst or the process or the you have the cells. So the main source of the light is free of cost. So the thermal decomposition, as I told you, this needs really high temperature. So we have very limited source. We cannot afford for this. So similarly, the biological decomposition is there are some reports. I'm sorry, this is not reliable, but in the sense it's not very scalable at present. People are demonstrated again in some levels using biological route, but it has to be really scaled up. But there is some possibilities also. It's not, we cannot simply say it's reliable. So this is a electrochemical water splitting process. The hydrogen water is produced into hydrogen and oxygen. The commercial electrolysis has typically 75% efficiency. The operating pressure is up to 50 bar. Okay, that's high pressure cylinders need for this additional compression. The lower efficiency by the operating at high temperature. Improve the efficiency by operating at high temperature. Develop high pressure electrolysis. The people are making electrolyzer. Here the main drawback is the membrane. So people are using a commercial membrane which is generally imported. So there are some effort to make a indigenous membrane fabrication. Once that is realized, then we could have we could minimize the cost of in that particular process. The other one is the electrolysis. Electrolysis you could do it in both acidic and then alkaline medium. If you see the acidic medium, this is a reference potential. I hope you may be aware of it. So this is a 0 volt, and then whereas the oxygen evolution is 1.23. So if you go for the alkaline medium, then it is 0.4, and then your hydrogen evolution occurs at minus 0.8. So if you add these two reactions, then it will be 1.23 in both in alkaline medium as well as the acidic medium. You cannot do only one reaction. That is a main drawback. Okay. So these are the over potential I just put for your understanding. So in the case of acidic medium, if you see the hydrogen over potential is very low. So, but whereas the oxygen over potential is very high. So if you see this almost 0.5 voltage is or 0.55 voltage is excess, you have to give for the process. Whereas in the again this alkaline medium, again you could see this up to 1 volt you could you should give for water electrolysis. So here the advantage is if you can have some membrane like this, so that oxygen produced in the other anode side it will go it will be collected separately. The hydrogen produced in the cathode side it will be separate. It could be collected separately. Because of this, so one of the process can be avoided. For example, if mixing of hydrogen and oxygen can be avoided, so there won't be any need to separate hydrogen and oxygen gas. So these are the various parameters which affect the electrolysis of water, like a temperature or pH, and then what is the medium, is alkaline or acidic medium. This could affect the electrolysis of water. Could see in the different medium, I just put the various voltage. But if you see this hydrochloric acid, it looks 1.31, but fortunately the chlorine will evolve in the other side. The chlorine will, is a very corrosive. Particularly the nascent chlorine is when it forms, it will be very corrosive. So most of the electrode may not be stable in this medium. So that's why even though this process looks low over potential, then this generally it's not viable for commercial production. So this is another flow chart you could see here. This is a pH is 0, or this is a pH of 14. So this is a hydrogen evolution potential. This is oxygen evolution potential. At the pH of highly acidic medium, or you can see here this is the hydrogen evolution is 0, but the oxygen evolution is 1.23. Or you move the pH from 0 to 14, if you, any point of time, if you draw a line from here to there, there will be a hydrogen evolution potential and oxygen evolution potential. If you add these two, then you obviously will end up with 1.23. So there is, you cannot escape this 1.23 is a minimum. So this is another interesting slide where you could see it's not only you produce hydrogen, also there is, you will also produce electric, some heat also. Okay. So this is a reversible voltage. This is a thermoneutral voltage. For example, below this, you cannot able to produce hydrogen gas. So above this, you can produce a hydrogen gas with the evolution of heat. But this area, you can, hydrogen gas is generated with the absorption of heat. So people will generally prefer this temperature and then this potential window to produce a hydrogen, particularly the water splitting of water. Coming back to the photocatalytic hydrogen production. So photocatalyst, maybe I'll just explain those who are new to this photocatalyst. Here this is a semiconductor is required. I don't know, I will just explain you in the coming slides why semiconductor is required. For example, you have a band gap. This is a valence band. This is a conduction band. So when you shine a light, so this electron is ejected from valence band to the conduction band. So you are producing electron hole pair. So we call it as excitons. So now this electron can move into the surface, and then this undergo for reduction reaction. And similarly, the holes produced on the valence band can move to the surface, and then it can go for any oxidation reaction. So this is what generally simple. It looks very simple, but unfortunately, the recombination, that means the electrons ejected to valence band to conduction band, instead of moving to the surface or it's consumed for this reduction reaction, this will come back and it will and sit with original position, or it may be coming back and combine with this holes produced in the valence band. So this process is recombination. Okay, so this recombination rate should be lower than this. This electron moves to the other reaction, reduction reaction. So if this rate of this reaction is higher than this, then you can avoid the recombination process. As much as recombination you avoid, the efficiency of the process will be higher. Unfortunately, it's not more than 20% of, not 20% is reported for this photocatalysis or photoelectrocatalysis process. So I'm just telling the highest value, but maybe most of the processes are much lower than this. So because people introduce some metal here, we call it as a co-catalyst. Since this is a main catalyst, so that this is a co-catalyst. The role of this catalyst is to enhance this, to or maybe to attract the electron which was produced on the conduction band. For example, this electron comes here, and then if the reduction of H+2 to hydrogen is taking time, that means the rate of this reaction is slow. That means this recombination will be very high. To avoid this, what we are doing is we have some another catalyst. So this electron is transferred to here. Now this electron is no longer available for this TiO2. Now it moves to the platinum. So because of this, the recombination of process can be avoided, so that the efficiency of the process could be increased. So once you go to the platinum surface, then it can take its whole time to reduce the H+ ion to hydrogen. Okay. So similarly, you can also take back your holes produced on the valence band. Okay, using some catalyst. So we call it as generally this platinum or iridium oxide could be used as a co-catalyst. So this is used to capture the holes. So this platinum or a gold or palladium, ruthenium, rhodium could be used to take the electrons. So this generally, if you see, when you consider a simple electrochemical process, if you give one electron to a system, the system will get reduced, right? The original system will get oxidized. By giving one electron, this will be get oxidized. So the other system which receive the electron will get reduced. So generally, if you see, there is an oxidation reaction, there is a reduction reaction. So that's what taking place in general electrochemistry. Here also you are doing the same thing. Here you are doing one reduction reaction, you are doing the oxidation reaction. But if you see, the catalyst is stable. The catalyst is nothing happened to the catalyst. Here more important thing is the energy which you are giving to the system. For example, if you assign a light, that is not sufficient to, that energy is not sufficient to excite an electron from here to there, then this light energy may not be absorbed by this system. So this energy of the light or this absorption of light is mainly depends on what is the band gap of the particular material. For example, the TiO2 is one of the best known photocatalysts. Okay, for hydrogen production or maybe even for decomposition of pollutants, all these cases. But unfortunately, the band gap of titanium dioxide is 3.2 electron volt. So if you see, convert 3.2 electron volt into wavelength, then it will be equivalent to almost 382 nanometer. So if you want to excite an electron from valence band of TiO2 to the conduction band of TiO2, you should shine a light with a wavelength of 382 nanometer or lower than 382 nanometer. Then only you could able to excite one electron. So unfortunately, the 382 nanometer falls under the UV region. So our sunlight, if you see our visible spectrum, if you see our sunlight spectrum, that only the UV light is only a 5%. Okay, so out of 5%, only 5% is UV light. Out of the 5%, your TiO2 has to absorb some, it has its own limitation to absorb the light. And then even it absorbs, this electron has to efficiently has to be transferred to this reduction reaction, or it will come back. It will get recombined, then simply it is waste. So because of all these complications, this overall photocatalytic process or photoelectrocatalytic process are low efficient in nature. Okay, so people are making different photocatalyst system, which can use it as a, which can generally used. Here, as I told you, in the photocatalytic system, the TiO2 is well known. It's also commercially, though the activity is very poor, so it can absorb only the UV light. People are still using this because of various reasons. One is a very stable system, and then this easily can be oxidized. So it generally it is used for the oxidation reaction. That is a removal of pollutant or dye molecule, or any oxidation reaction at TiO2 is very strong. So if somebody wants to interested, then you could see how this oxidation is occurs. Simply if some water molecules absorb on the TiO2 surface, and slowly it will be absorbed by these surface atoms, and then this is dissociation of these water molecules absorbed, and then you can produce some nascent oxygen, or you can also produce some hydroxyl radical, so that it can oxidize the pollutant. There are two ways. One is direct oxidation of pollutant, or it may be indirect oxidation of pollutant. In the case of direct oxidation, so the electron is received from the oxidant. That means that the pollutant to this conduction band of TiO2. Sorry, the valence band of TiO2. In such a case, this pollutant is directly oxidized. The other case, the absorbed water molecule on the TiO2 surface, it will produce hydroxyl radical or superoxide radicals. So these radicals will decompose your pollutant. So that is indirect oxidation of pollutant. So this not new. Actually, this is already in the market. Like for example, air cleaners or self-cleaning ceramic tiles and glasses. You could see this A part is the tiles. The tiles marked with A is coated with TiO2. So when the dust particle absorb on the surface, it will be oxidized, and then the surface will become bright. So similarly, even the mirror, super hydrophobic coating, and then this water get absorbed on this TiO2 coated area will be removed. So you could see these clear pictures. So this is not new. Actually, people are even our face creams, all these things as TiO2. So how to use this TiO2 or TiO2 system based system for our current needs, that is for hydrogen production. Unfortunately, though TiO2 is a well-known catalyst for photocatalytic applications, their hydrogen production efficiency is so poor. So people are trying to make TiO2 is active for hydrogen production, and also it should absorb the visible light. So first important thing is, as I told you, the light harvesting, and then charge excitations, and then how you are separating the excited charges, that is electron hole pairs, and then how you are managing the bulk charge recombination, and then there is also possibilities for surface charge recombination. Here you could see this is a difference. There is a recombination itself. There are different kind of recombinations. For example, in the case of semiconductors, holes will be produced at the valence band. The electron will be produced, will be ejected to the conduction band. So now you produce the excitons or electron hole pair. Now this electron move to the surface where it can consumed for the reduction reaction, or it will move through the bulk, and then similarly this holes also move through the bulk material, and it will get recombined here, or it move into the surface and then it may get recombined instead of going for reduction and oxidation reaction. So all this process, or maybe directly this electron come back here by liberating some heat, it can come back. By all this process, there is a loss for us. So you cannot avoid any such reactions. Only thing is you could make this reaction more fast. Okay, so that the other reaction may be minimized, so that you can increase the efficiency of the process. So by using a co-catalyst or some other semiconductor, there are various approaches. Okay, so here maybe I just put some of these approaches, such a metal doped semiconductor or non-metal doped semiconductor at TiO2, or TiO2 is clubbed with cadmium sulfide, and then this is generally as a coupling of two semiconductors. Or you can also combine this TiO2 with some graphene or carbon nitride or this kind of material. So this electron can be easily injected to the other system. So the electron hole pair can be separated quickly. So you will not have any recombination issues. So the other alternate approach is you can also separate this electron hole pair through some external circuits. So essentially your photoelectrochemistry comes here. For example, this you can produce holes here and then electrons here. This electron will move to this support system. That means there's some electrode, and then this electron move through the external circuit to the other side. You have here the counter electrode. So this will be going for reduction reaction. There will be some species that will be getting reduced here. So the oxidation takes place here. So that's what it's almost is. You can see that your solar cells concept. Okay. Or you can have some compartmentalized cells where this oxygen evolution takes place in one side. The other side you can produce H plus ions. At the same time, these H plus ions can be combined with some other fuels like carbon dioxide or some base material. Then you can make a solar fuels. Or if you have some dye molecule, it could also decompose instead of oxygen evolution. You can make some dye decomposition. The other side you will get a hydrogen evolution. So these are the various approaches people are generally using it for photo based processes. Okay, this is not only a hydrogen process, it's a hydrogen production. You can make a hydrogen production at one side. The other side you can use oxidation reaction. The oxidation reaction is not necessarily to the oxygen evolution. Okay, instead of oxygen evolution, you can use some pollutant. The pollutant will be getting oxidized. Essentially, what you should need is you should get both oxidation reaction and reduction reaction to take place. Then only the overall reaction will take place. If your oxidation reduction, for example, your hydrogen evolution rate is very high, but the oxygen evolution or this oxidation reaction in the other side is very small. For example, this is a compartmentalized cell. This H plus is reduced to hydrogen, and then here you have the photocatalyst or photoresponsive material. When you shine light, the electron hole pair will be produced. The electron move through the external circuit, and then here it will produce hydrogen. So the hydrogen will be evolved here. So if you have some membrane, so hydrogen penetration to this side or the penetration of chemical from this side to other side will be reduced. So it will be reduced. In such a case, you can produce a pure hydrogen. Also, instead of oxygen evolution, you could make some decomposition of other materials. So here, no matter how bright or how intense light you are shining it, okay. So, but the only main condition is the light has sufficient energy. That means that the energy of this light should be higher than the band gap energy of the semiconductor. Okay, otherwise it will not get excited. Also, the current does not depend on the wavelength of the light. It depends on the intensity of the light. For example, if you provide a sufficient wavelength light with high intense, then obviously the current move through this external circuit will be higher. So that's why here the materials plays major role. So what kind of catalyst you are using it? This side you can use simply some platinum mesh or platinum foil can be used. But here, what kind of semiconductor which are used, that is makes a major issues. So some of these cases, there may be some smaller issues. So that means some of the reaction needs some kind of minimum energy. So that's what you are doing it in your photoelectrochemical cells. What you are doing is you have a counter electrode, you have a reference electrode, and then working electrode is your semiconductor based or photocatalyst based material. When you shine a light, you will apply some bias potential. Okay, that means some minimal energy you are giving it to the system so that this reaction takes place quickly. So here the that is what the electrochemistry plays. In most of the cases, the bias voltage will be 0.2 or 0.3. By having this, what you are doing is you are electrochemically you are increasing the efficiency of the system. So that could be monitored through measuring the photocurrent, how the originally the current will follow, and then when you switch on the light or switch off the light, how it follows. So this kind of characterization is generally used in photoelectrochemistry. So maybe I will come to the fundamentals again. Why the semiconductors are used? Why not insulators or metals could be used for this? Okay, so this is a hydrogen evolution potential. This is oxygen evolution potential. So here is the metal. Metal, you know that both your conduction band or valence band are mixed or it's overlapped. So you don't have to have any bands. As I told you here, you should do the reduction reaction separately. You should do the oxidation reaction separately. Now, whereas in the case of metals, you can do either oxidation reaction or reduction reaction. So you have only one energy level. Whereas here you need two energy levels to conduct both oxidation and reduction reaction in the same system. In such a case, your insulators are the best material because you have a conduction band here, your valence band is here. That means that it's too wide. You could have any reaction in between. For example, instead of hydrogen reduction, the hydrogen evolution, instead of oxygen evolution, you can have some other reaction also somewhere bottom here. Up to here, you could be able to do. But unfortunately, the insulators, the band gap is really too high. You don't have any energy source. That means the free energy source. What we are ultimate idea is to use the free energy source like sunlight. Okay, so that is not sufficient to excite one electron from your valence band to the conduction band. So that's why people are using a semiconductor where you have optimum band gap. So most of the cases you can divide into 4 categories. Okay, so based on your hydrogen evolution reaction, hydrogen and that means the water splitting reaction. So this is a 0 volt for hydrogen evolution. For oxygen evolution, you need 1.23. So if I have a catalyst like this valence band is here, this conduction band is here, then I can do both oxidation reaction and reduction reaction. So this catalyst is more appropriate. So if I have a semiconductor like this valence band is here and then this conduction band is here, then I can do only a reduction reaction. I cannot do oxidation of water. So that means if I use this particular catalyst, I cannot make complete decomposition of water. I can produce hydrogen, no doubt, but instead of oxygen evolution, I need to do some other reaction. Still, I can do hydrogen evolution. Okay. In the case of the other system, that's O type catalyst, you can do only oxidation reaction. You cannot produce hydrogen. At any cost, you cannot use this particular catalyst for production of hydrogen. So whatever the oxygen evolution or any other reaction you use, you cannot make hydrogen evolution. So if you select some catalyst which has the valence band and conduction band in between these energy levels, then you cannot do hydrogen evolution or you cannot do oxygen evolution. This may be a good photocatalyst for decomposition of some particular dye or particular pollutant, no doubt, but you cannot use this for hydrogen evolution. So that is the point. So based on this water electrolysis, generally we could able to make different kind of classification, majorly in 4 types. So other important thing is the interface. As I told you that here in the case of semiconductor, the main thing is semiconductor vacuum interface, and we have a semiconductor metal interface, we have semiconductor electrolyte interface, and the case of coupled semiconductor, we have to semiconductor interface. So before somebody wants to work on very fundamental, they have to be very thorough on these areas. I just give one example. So forget about this forget about this side, and then you can just see this side. Okay, so this is a semiconductor in vacuum. Okay, so vacuum, you have some, this side is now vacuum. So this is your conduction band, this is your valence band, this is your Fermi energy level. So this is your band gap. Okay, though it looks like perfect straight line, it may not be a perfect straight line because of various reasons. Maybe I will just tell you here. So when you connect into the system, whether it's a metal or electrolyte or another semiconductor, so it will not, may not be a perfect straight line. So there may be a band bending. I hope you might be aware of this. The band will get bent at the near the surface. In bulk, it will be a straight, but in the surface or the interface, it will get bent. It may be upward or it may be a downside also, depending on what kind of material you are combining with this. Also, you could produce some surface states. So these surface states is mainly because of the defect in the crystal system. Though I was talking about TiO2, I can theoretically, I can calculate what is my valence band, what is my conduction band, and where will be my energy levels, all these things. So this is the TiO2 in pure form, or it may be in vacuum. It's not having any connection with any other material. Then I can have this kind of situation. But this phenomena could be changed depending on the material which I interface with my TiO2. Even if I take a TiO2, put it in simple water, then I am changing the interface. There is a semiconductor water interface or semiconductor liquid interface. So because of this also, as I told you, the surface states. So the surface is mainly depends on what kind of material and what is the morphology or what is the size or shape. By changing all these things, you can alter, you can tune the surface states. So these surface states also plays a major role. I think in somewhere I have mentioned some of the surface states. Maybe I just go back to those slides. I'm sorry, maybe I will fish out that slide, particular slide. I will come back to you. So this surface states is mainly, there are two different categories, mainly this intrasthenic and extrasthenic, and then this is intrasthenic again divided into time states and Schottky states. This comes because of the imperfection in the position of the ions in the crystal lattice. The other one comes under the imperfection in the crystal lattice on the surface. So here, externally, what you can do is you can also dope some impurities, or it may be intentionally or unintentionally. You can also tune these states. So based on this population and then this energy, all these things will vary. Whether it may be populated near to the conduction band or near to the valence band, or it's close to the Fermi level. All these things matters in photocatalysis. So that's why we could able to make the same TiO2 with a different morphology or different preparation route or different, since you could see the lakhs and lakhs of papers in TiO2 alone for decomposition of some pollutant or dye, but still if you see the activities are different because most of these characteristics are different. The band gap and band position, how this band bending occurs, what kind of co-catalyst you are using, what is the surface area, and then defect in the crystal structures, or what is the pH, and then what is the stability against the photocatalyst, or the photocorrosion. So this is point I think it's more important. So though some of the catalysts are well known, they are very susceptible to the photocorrosion. Here you could see, so most of the semiconductors have very high surface area. You could see this TiO2 is a perfect, zinc oxide is also perfect, but the problem is 3.2 volt, electron volt. Because of this, we cannot use it in visible light. Okay. The cadmium sulfate looks good. It comes under OR category, that is 2.5 electron volt. It's well within the visible region. Okay. Whereas if you go for zinc sulfate or WO3, Fe2O3, francium titanate, all is has its own advantage and disadvantages. But one of the promising catalysts is a cadmium sulfate, but unfortunately the cadmium sulfate is is very corrosive in nature. I'll just explain to you what is very corrosive. And again, those who are new to this field, maybe you can have this kind of equation to correlate your conventional electrochemical scale into the absolute electrochemical scale, so that you can theoretically you could able to calculate what is the valence band level or conduction band level of your semiconductor with this conventional reduction and oxidation potential of the particular pollutant or particular reduction reaction, so that you could theoretically you can work out whether this catalyst could be used to this particular oxidation reduction or reduction reaction or not. So here I just explained what is a photocorrosion. For example, I told you the zinc sulfate, zinc oxide, cadmium sulfates are very corrosive in nature. But just we'll take a zinc sulfate. Let us not worry about it. Other things. The valence band of zinc sulfate is here. The conduction band of zinc sulfate is here. Okay. So as I told you, this energy level is only 2.5 electron volt or 2.6 electron volt. This will falls under around 500 to 600 nanometer. So that's perfectly good for photocatalysts, visible light photocatalysts. But unfortunately, your sulfur 2- ion will take place two holes, and then it will deposit as a sulfur. So this potential falls in between this valence and conduction band, particularly this close to this valence band. Because of this, what will happen is when you excite a electron from valence band to the conduction band, you will produce electron here. You will have a holes here. So these holes will be absorbed by the sulfur 2-, that is a cadmium sulfate, you have 2- sulfide ion. So that ion will absorb these holes and then it will deposit as a sulfur. So if you use cadmium sulfate for several hours, there will be a dissolution of sulfide ion. Once the sulfide ion comes out and then this cadmium 2+ also get to go to the solution, the sulfate will be deposited over the as a sulfur over the catalyst. So this sulfur will hinder the light absorption of the cadmium sulfide. That is one drawback. The other side is the cadmium is slowly coming to the solution. The cadmium is a little poisonous, so it is not generally acceptable. At the same time, you are also your catalyst also getting dissolving. So because of all these reasons, so your cadmium sulfate is not a best catalyst for hydrogen evolution or oxidation reaction or pollutant removal. So again, this is a stability. Okay, the stability of the cadmium sulfide is questionable here. So here, these are some other values. You could see there are various materials has been already listed. So if you see, hardly only few materials that could be used for both hydrogen and oxygen evolution reaction. So here, just I give one small example. Maybe I just flash it. A few years before, we made a cadmium sulfide in a confined environment like in the zeolite matrix. What we do it is we collected different zeolites. Zeolites, you know, it's a porous structure. In between, we put some cadmium ion by stirring with some cadmium nitrate solution, and then you can make the precipitate of cadmium sulfide. And then since the cadmium sulfide is ionic compound, then you could put 48% HF, only the silica matrix will come out. Okay. So that cadmium sulfide nanoparticle you could get it. Depending on the pore size or pore volume, you could able to make a different size of uniform size of cadmium sulfide. Since when you have a nanoparticle, the band gap of your valence band and conduction band length will be increased. Because of this, you could able to do more oxidation and reduction reaction. Of course, you have to compromise in the light absorption. Since we have cadmium sulfide and around 400 or 500, then there may be some small variation in this. So if you see, there is a for bulk cadmium sulfide, this band gap is 1.23, whereas this nano size catalyst, it varies to 2.21, 2.2 or 2.38. So again, we have done some hydrogen evolution. In this case, we use some kind of sacrificial agent. So 35 ml of 0.24 mol of sodium sulfide and sodium sulfate. So this instead of oxygen evolution, so this particular reaction will take place so that only the hydrogen is liberated. So there won't be any sulfur deposition, but still you could see there is some amount of micromoles You could see some 600 micromoles of hydrogen could be produced in 6 hours. That is maybe long before. We have also measured with the different catalysts prepared in different materials. And more importantly, we put different co-catalysts. As I told you, we put platinum, palladium, ruthenium, rhodium, ruthenium. We have correlated how this activity varies with respect to the redox potential, also the metal hydrogen bond. The metal hydrogen bond should not be so strong. For example, if it is a platinum hydrogen bond is so strong, then the hydrogen liberation will be reduced. Also the work function of the metal, and then this we have correlated all 3 parameters with the hydrogen evolution. But this is more on fundamentals. If some of you interested, maybe you can go and read this paper. As I told you, one of the advantages, for example, I told you that TiO2 is active only in the visible UV region. Instead of that, what you can do is you can couple with another chemical, preferably this is maybe a cadmium sulfide. In such case, the cadmium sulfide will absorb the light and the visible light, and then it will turn the electron may be transferred to the conduction band of TiO2. So the reduction reaction takes. So the other side, what we have done is,
participants, please mute your microphone. Divya, mute your microphone,
recently
please.
what we have done is, in the previous case, I told you that there is a photo corrosion, but by even coupling these, your TiO2 will be active, but still your cadmium sulfide may not be stable. And still it is having connection with your water or the aqueous medium. So instead of that, what we have done is very recently, we took a cadmium sulfide core. Over there, we put very thin layer of TiO2 so that the light can penetrate through this TiO2 layer. Hardly this, the thickness of this TiO2 may be 5 to 10 nanometers. So the light can penetrate through this, and then this excites this cadmium sulfide. Now, visible light can be used, the cadmium sulfide used to excite this cadmium sulfide, but this cadmium sulfide is not exposed to the electrolyte, or it may be in the solution. So because of this, the photo corrosion could be avoided. So by having this, we made a different kind of catalyst system, like a core cell system, where we find the core is active, but the core has some issues like a photocorrosive material. Then you could have some stable TiO2. One of the advantage of TiO2 is a very stable system. So it will be very tolerate to all the chemical environment. So that is one of the advantage why TiO2 is still active for various applications, particularly photocatalyst based applications. So if you could see here in the previous case, I just put some micromoles. Here you could see this is millimoles. This is that also it is in per hour. So it's a per hour. It is maybe close to 80 millimoles per hour. Whereas the previous case we observed only a 600 micromoles per 6 hours or 7 hours. So this is a kind of improvement in the case of last 10 years. We could able to have this kind of systems. So we have observed, we have also prepared various systems. As I told you, the cadmium sulfate based system, over there zinc sulfate based system. Here the point is the zinc sulfate has the band gap is 3.8. So it will not absorb the light in the visible region. So there won't be any kind of photo corrosion in the case of zinc sulfate. Whereas the light is absorbed by the cadmium sulfate, but the cadmium sulfate is in the core. It's not allowed to react with the solution. So that because of this will not undergo any oxidation or reduction reaction. This job is only to get excite and then give electron and holes to the zinc sulfate system. So similarly, we have also used different other systems like C3N4 instead of as a substrate, so that this excited electron can be transferred to the zinc sulfate, the C3N4 system, so that recombination of this main catalyst could be avoided. So this is another examples where this cadmium sulfate TiO2 system is explored. So we have made, you can go to this paper if you want to, somebody interested and to read this. We have studied all the aspects of the cell thickness and then how the pH affect the systems, all these things. Also, here as I told you, this is a thickness of TiO2 will be around 6 or 7 nanometers. If the point is, if you put more thick, the TiO2 will not allow the light to penetrate. At the same time, if you put very thin or it's not uniform coating, then your cadmium sulfide will be exposed. So then it will undergo a decomposition. So another important thing which comes in this recently is anion doping. So cation doping is well known. Recently, anion like sulfur, nitrogen, doped TiO2s are slowly coming up because of this change in the band gap. Okay, this anion doping is completely different from the cation doping. So this last few years, maybe I think more than 10 years, but you could see now almost this area is almost saturated with nitrogen doping or sulfur doping or boron nitrogen co-doping systems. So the co-doping system is essentially alters the band gap. So that is the only thing we have to see here. So this is one of the solar photocatalytic experiments which we have carried out in the large scale, where we put 185 ml reactors. So here the point is we use only solar light to produce the hydrogen. We could able to produce more amount of hydrogen. I will just tell you here. You could see this is we can able to make some millimoles of hydrogen. That means you could see really the bubbles coming out in the system. So simply by having a water displacement reaction, you could calculate how much amount of hydrogen you could able to produce. So in all these cases, we produce the hydrogen in the ml. That means milliliter, 35 ml, 40 ml, all these things. By having this kind of reaction of 1 liter reactor vessels, by having 200 milligrams of carbon, 200 milligrams of catalyst, you could have a stable system to produce huge amount of hydrogen. The point is, it's a promising. It's not like only R&D. This is slowly people are coming up with a pilot scale for the constant production of hydrogen using solar light. So maybe with this, I'll thank you for your kind attention. I also thank few people like our director and